Good. Today we are continuing with direct and indirect speech. This is the second one in our series of 3. And just to remind you, when I am working with direct and indirect speech, I am changing a sentence from a person's direct words and I am putting that into the indirect words, also sometimes called the reported words. That's why direct, indirect speech can sometimes also be called reported speech. So here you'll see as an example, I will call you tomorrow. And that was on Friday night, as they always promised that they will. The following Tuesday, after she's had all the ice cream in the house, she calls her friend and she now reports what he said. She reports his words. She's putting his direct words into indirect speech by saying, he said that he would call me the next day. That is what we will be doing. But today we are going to focus specifically on our verbs. More importantly, our reporting verb. What is my reporting verb? It is the verb that tells me who is talking as well as how they might be saying these words. For example, Tim screams. So this little introductory clause shows me who is doing the talking. That would be Tim. And how is Tim talking? In this case, he is screaming, "Give me back my phone." It could be Tim whispers, or Tim says, or Tim mumbles. As long as it tells you who is doing the talking and how the talking is being done. Now, what is important to note about my reporting verb is the tense. In my first example, my reporting verb is in the present tense. Tim screams, "Give me back my phone." But in my second example, my reporting verb is in the past tense. It ends with an ed. Tim screamed, "Give me back my phone." As long as you can now recognize that this is my reporting verb. It's also sometimes referred to as the introductory clause, and that will contain my reporting verb, the verb that shows me who is doing the talking and how they are talking. When my reporting verb is in the present tense, please note, then I am not going to make any changes. There won't be any changes when I change it from reported speech into my indirect speech. So let's have a look at some examples. Cindy says, "I will come to your house tonight." Indra shouts, "I have seen that film twice." Daisy whispers, "I meet my boyfriend every Saturday." And Chandra moans, "I don't like Mondays." Now, as you can see, all these examples contain reporting verbs that are in the present tense. Says, shouts, whispers, moans. When my reporting verb is in the present tense, I am not going to make any changes when I rewrite my sentence from direct into indirect speech. For example, Cindy says that she will come to my house tonight. So you'll see that I kept the same tense. I will come to your house, and I kept the time, tonight. She will come to my house tonight. I didn't change the tense, and I didn't change the time word there. I kept that the same. My next example, Indra shouts, "I have seen that film twice." And here you'll see I am in my perfect present tense. I stay in my perfect present tense. Indra shouts that he has seen that film twice. Or Desi whispers, I meet my boyfriend every Saturday. I am in my simple present tense, and you will see that I stay in my simple present tense when Desi will be whispering. Desi whispers that she meets her boyfriend every Saturday. I do not change my tense. And the last example, Chandra moans, I don't like Mondays. You'll see you stay in the same tense. We focused on do's and don'ts. So you should at this stage know that when I have a singular subject, I use doesn't. And when I have I must use don't. But it's the same tense. Chandra moans, I don't like Mondays. Chandra moans that he doesn't like Mondays. Important, when my reporting verb is in the present tense, no changes. I must stay in the same tense. However, when my reporting verb is in the past tense, I have to change all my verbs in my direct speech one step back into the past. Let's quickly have a look at how that differs when my reporting verb is in the past tense. For example, Cindy said, I will come to your house tonight. Said is in the past tense. Or Indra shouted. That ed shows me I'm in the past tense. I have seen that film twice. Desi whispered, I meet my boyfriend every Saturday. And Chandra moaned, I don't like sport. In my indirect speech, when my reporting verb is in the past tense, I'm now going to have to go one step back, one tense back. So Cindy said, I will come to your house tonight. That changes. I now have to change my verbs one step back into the past. So that then becomes Cindy said that she will becomes would come to my house. And tonight, a time word changes into that night. One step back into the past. Indra shouted, I have seen that film twice. Have seen is in my present perfect. So that has to go one step back. Indra shouted that he had seen that film twice. So there I changed my tense one step back into the past. Desi whispered. My reporting verb is in the past tense. Now I have to change my verb in my reported speech one step back into the past. So Desi whispered, I meet my boyfriend every Saturday. That changes into Desi whispered that she met. So meet changes one step back into the past into that. And lastly, Chandra moaned, I don't like sport. This case, don't is in my simple present. I have to change that one step back into the past. Chandra moaned. My reporting verb is in the past tense. That he, don't, one step back into the past, change into didn't like sport. So just to recap, when my reporting verb is in the past tense, I have to change all my other verbs that is in the reported speech. All my other verbs in the reported speech, I now have to change one step back into the past. And this is where it becomes a bit tricky. So we are going to look at my tenses intensively. We are first going to look at how my verb to be changes one step back into the past, as well as my auxiliary verbs or helping verbs. So What happens to my verb to be when I go from direct to indirect speech? There's examples of my verb to be. Am, is, are, or shall, will, can, may, must, have or has to, and ought to. What happens to these when I change it from direct to indirect speech? And they all have to go one step back into the past. You can write all of this down. So am, is, and are, one step back into the past becomes was or were. I shall consider your request. This is, M.Neethling said that she should consider your request. Will you please pass me the book? Ben asked Harry, would he please pass him the book? Can I go to a party on Saturday night? Erica asked her mother whether she could go to a party on Saturday night. May I borrow your pencil? Asked Henry. Henry asked me if he might borrow my pencil. And then these three, must, have, has to, and ought to, all change into had to. So I must always eat my vegetables. My mother told me that I had to always eat my vegetables. They have to go to Cape Town on urgent business. The principal told them that they had to go to Cape Town on urgent business. And I ought to brush my teeth twice a day. The mother told her daughter that she had to brush her teeth twice a day. So this is what my verb to be and my other auxiliary verbs look like when I change it from direct to indirect, one step back into the past. We are going to look at my other tenses more intensively next. So this is going to be quite a lot of writing because you need to write the example, the tense in my simple present tense. Then just to give you a little guide, that's when I use my auxiliary or helping verbs is, are, or am. So in other words, Susie said, I am tired. So there you can see that my reporting words is in my simple present tense. But note, my reporting verb is in the past tense. Or I can have my sentence in the simple past tense. For example, you're going to have a was or a were in there. As you can see, they were late again. John said they were late again. Or another example is I can be in the simple future tense, will or shall. So Ursula said she will do the dishes tomorrow. Again, just note my reporting verb is in the past tense. So what happens to these guys when I have to change it from direct to indirect speech? My simple present tense goes one step back, and that then becomes my simple past tense. So if I had to take that example, Susie said, I am tired, and I translate that from direct to indirect, it becomes Susie said that she was tired, because I have to change my verb one step back. Am becomes was. When I get a sentence in my simple past tense, and I need to take that one step back, then I use my past perfect tense. In other words, had and been. So if I take that example, John said they were late again. My sentence is quite clearly in my simple past tense, and I have to change that into the indirect speech. It's going to become John said that they had been late again. Just note there, my verb is always going to be in its PP form, in its past participle. Late only has one form. And in my simple future, if my sentence, my direct words was in the simple future tense, for example, she will do the dishes tomorrow, then that changes one step back into the past. It becomes simple past tense. So Ursula said she would do the dishes tomorrow becomes Ursula said that she, Ursula said she will do the dishes tomorrow becomes Ursula said she would do the dishes. And then, as you can see, tomorrow becomes the following day. We're going to look specifically at time words and place words in the next set of slides. I'm continuing with my tenses because we have many more tenses. And what do they become if I talk about it having to go one step back in the past from my direct to indirect? So if my direct words are in the present continuous tense, in other words, it contains is, are, am, present, and my verb plus ing, which makes it continuous. You are going to regret that. So quite clearly here my sentence is in the present continuous tense, and I have to change that one step back into the past. Then I change it into the past continuous tense. So am is an are, just becomes was or were, and my verb is still going to have an ing at the back. So you are going to regret that. Tom screamed that they were going to regret that. If my sentence was in the past continuous, for example, Sandy said, I was having a great time. There you see past, was and were, and then my verb plus ing indicates that I'm in my continuous tense. Then I have to change it into the past perfect. We saw that with the simple past tense as well. It went into the past perfect. In other words, now I have to add an had been and my verb plus ing. So Sandy said, I was having a great time. Sandy said that she had been having a great time. And if my sentence was in the future continuous tense, for example, will or shall be plus my verb and ing, Ben replied, my brother will be helping me with that. You can see future, the will and or the shall, and in this case continuous, my verb plus ing. So my brother will be helping me. Those words were in the future continuous tense, and now I want to change that one step back into the past because, as you can see, my reporting verb is in the past tense. Replied, said, screamed, all of my reporting verbs here in the past tense. Therefore, I have to change all of them one step back. Then my future continuous becomes past continuous. For example, will or shall becomes would or should, and my verb plus ing. That always shows me continuous, verb plus ing, continuous, verb plus ing, continuous. So Ben replied that his brother, instead of will be helping, will now becomes would be helping him with that. my last set of changes to my tense. What happens if I need to go one step back from direct to indirect? And I'm now just going to focus on my two perfect examples here. In my present perfect, then I will have an example sentence like this. Jason said, just note the reporting verb in the past tense. Jason said, I have hiked that route last year. That has and have shows me I'm in my present. And then my perfect tense, remember I'm always going to use my verb in its PP form, in its most past tense form. That's why it's hiked, the most past tense that it can go into. Jason said, I have hiked that route last year. That is an example where my direct words is in my present perfect tense. At the bottom, I have an example of my direct words being in my past perfect tense. So Sarah cried, I had such high hopes for him. In my past perfect, that had shows me that I am in my past. Sorry, and I should have added here plus PP, my most past tense form of my verb. Let's just have a look at what happens when I change it from direct to indirect. My present perfect becomes past perfect. So instead of having has or have, I now change that one step back into the past, and that becomes had. So Jason said, I have hiked that route before, becomes Jason said that he had, most PP form of my verb, hiked that route the year before. But what happens if my sentence is already in the past perfect tense? Then you just add a had. So Sarah cried, I had such high hopes for him. To show me that I am now going one step back into the past, I must add an extra had. So Sarah cried that she had such high hopes for him. I just want to set your minds at ease that the perfect tenses are very rarely asked in exams and tests because they are a bit tricky. I just wanted to show you what happens to my perfect tenses when I change it one step back into the past.